welcome to this fireside chat. I'm Shivani Mutana from Your Story, and we're going to be talking about the very interesting and fast-growing trend of cryptocurrency today, with a special focus on building and scaling a successful crypto business. Now, as some of you may already know, WazirX is India's largest cryptocurrency exchange with over 6 million users and a monthly volume of $6.2 billion. It bills itself as India's most trusted Bitcoin and cryptocurrency exchange. With the potential to become India's first crypto unicorn, WazirX is a cryptocurrency exchange app where you can buy and sell Bitcoin, Ripple, Ethereum, Tron, and over 100 other cryptocurrencies. So to tell us more about building and scaling a successful crypto business and how WazirX is putting India on the global crypto map, we have with us Nishil Shetty, who is the CEO and founder of WazirX. He, of course, is a serial entrepreneur and a man on a mission to make crypto accessible to everyone in India. So welcome, Nishil, and thank you so much for your time with us today.
Hey, Shivani, thanks a lot for having me here.
Sure. So let's take it straight to the first question. And if I were to ask you, why crypto in terms of the venture that you got into, what did you see in the platform and what potential do you see in it?
Sure. There's quite a bit of a backstory behind this. I'll try to compress it. Before this, I was running another startup called Crowdfire, which is a social media management app. And that relied heavily on all these third-party APIs by Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And this was way back. I started it in 2011. And back then, all these large platforms, they were like really open to developers building on top of that. But in 2017, most of these platforms started changing the rules of what you could build on top of them and what was not allowed. And they started sort of alienating the developers who built on top of them. And this was the time when I realized that if you build on top of other platforms, sooner or later, they'll come and change the terms and conditions. And this is true of any platform that you see, even the Play Store, the App Store. Often you'll hear that there's a new launch and then some apps have to be killed or they die out because the platform builds that on its own. So when this was happening, I realized that there's this new world that was being created, which was the whole world of decentralization, the world of blockchain, where no single player or entity controls that ecosystem. So, you as a developer, when you build something on the blockchain, no one is going to come and tell you not to do this or not build that because nobody owns the blockchain. It's a decentralized thing which is run by the community. And I think that was something that attracted us. Then we started figuring out what do you build on top of it. And we realized that in India, there was not a good platform where people could enter into the decentralized ecosystem. And when I say enter into the decentralized ecosystem, it's how do you enter crypto for the first time in your life? How do you go from a centralized ecosystem that you are existing in? How do you go to decentralized? Is when you buy your first Bitcoin or when you buy your first crypto. And I wanted to make that easy. It was really difficult back in 2017, 2018. From my own experience, I tried to buy Bitcoin for the first time in 2017 with money. It took me about a week. And by that time, the Bitcoin prices had sort of, really gone up. So we set out to build an easy and a quick way for people to buy their first crypto. And that's how we launched WazirX in 2018. So that's what led me to this. And after that, there's been a lot of ups and downs, interesting things, challenges, which we can discuss through this interview.
Sean, it's still an interesting journey there that you shared with us. And if you can also tell us, a little bit more about what you're doing in India and in the global crypto as well. How are you doing things differently? Because you spoke about the journey and the challenges. Now we have a lot of people and competitors, in the game. So how are you doing things differently?
Sure. See, I think right from the beginning, when we were launching, it was not like WazirX was the first crypto exchange. We were probably the 8th or the 10th, or it was not innovative to build an exchange even in 2017 because there were quite a few exchanges. But what I realized is if you look at crypto, we are in an unregulated market. What I mean by that is there are no licenses required to run a crypto exchange. Anyone can start an exchange. As against, if you want to start a bank, you need to have a license. There's a long process. So what happens in the traditional financial system is you trust a bank because the bank has got a license. But how do you go about trusting a crypto exchange? And there were so many. And I realized that the way to earn the trust is if you as a founder are in front of people. And until we launched, there was no founder in India in the crypto ecosystem who was out there interacting with people, talking to people. So I saw that as like the first opportunity to put myself in front of our audiences, and that's what I did. And today I'm probably one of the largest crypto influencers in India. And this has helped a lot because in an unregulated market where you don't have licenses to prove that you are doing something good for the ecosystem, I think putting yourself in front of people is the most important thing. And that's defensible. If you see, that's different. A founder coming out and talking to people. So that has helped us a lot. The second is, focusing on what your customers want rather than anything else. We don't try to out innovate or build something that we believe is good. What we do is we listen to what our users want. We run surveys before we even decide on a new feature. We ask our users. We don't want to say that none of us are Steve Jobs, where we know what people don't know about. We just build for what our customers want, and that has really helped us grow fast. The third is education. If you look at crypto, it's not a segment where you have an audience already. You will have to educate people and tell them what crypto is. You're building the market. Unlike let's say the traditional internet world where you just have to build a product and if people need it, they'll come. Out here, you'll also have to explain to people why they need to get into crypto. What is this whole ecosystem all about? So there's a lot of education that exists, and we've done a lot of education partnerships with a lot of startups which are teaching what crypto is. It's like the early days of the internet. Even before you could tell someone that they need an email address, you need to tell them to get an internet connection and be on the internet. So that's where we are, and I think education has played a large part in that. So all of these things, what has happened is they sort of created a moat for us as an exchange, where even though there have been so many new exchanges cropping up before us and after us, we've sort of been able to grow consistently. And today we are the largest in India. We do about $6 billion in monthly trading volume. So I think it's been going good. Not because we have one or two features different. See, everyone can build the same features. You cannot really be different in terms of building more features, but you could be different in your communication. How do you interact with your customers? How do you put yourself in front of them? How do you bring in trust into the market, especially in the financial world? So all of these things have sort of, I think, helped WazirX stay ahead.
Sure, Nishchal, I think you really clearly put it there. Starting a crypto business is not something that's really easy because you really need to also educate the consumer on what the product itself is. So you've given us a lot of key takeaways from what it takes to build a crypto product. And now coming to the starting issue itself, what we call a cold start or an empty room problem, so to speak, in the startup ecosystem. That, of course, if you don't sort of set it right at the outset, could really derail the entire venture. So in the context of a crypto product, how did you really solve for this cold start problem?
That's a really good question, and something that most people don't really think about when they start. You just started and then you realize, how do I really get past this? I've launched a product, now what? Because this was my second venture, I sort of took a different approach. So even before we built the product, we made an announcement. And since I was already active on social, I ensured that I could take advantage of this network I've already built. And instead of first building the product, what I did was we built a landing page which spoke about what we'll be building. And we sort of opened up an early sign-up experience for people. Along with that, we also announced WRX, which is our crypto token. And we made sure that we give away a certain percentage of that to our early signups. There was a reward for you if you signed up early. And the moment I announced this, to my surprise, I thought maybe 500 or 1,000 people would do pre-sign up. Within a couple of weeks, I think, of announcement, we saw about 50 or 60,000 people sign up because people wanted that reward of early sign up. And that sort of, gave us that initial, I would say, critical mass that you need when you launch a product. So we launched our product to 50,000 people who are waiting already. And I think that's probably one of the key things. When you start something, always try to build a community. You don't have to wait for your entire product to be built out before you start marketing it or promoting it. I did that. The moment we decided we would build an exchange, I started marketing it.
So interesting, stance that you took over there to also bring in some amount of customers that were actually waiting for that product, and you must have also collected data from them right at the beginning as well. Now, coming to the challenges, in terms of scaling, we've spoken about building the product, but the next level of scaling, particularly one that's on a mission like yours to make crypto accessible to everyone in India. It is, of course, a fast growing trend that's catching on, but how do you really scale the next step going forward?
It's also interesting because for an exchange like us, and there are different kinds of products. In a product like an exchange, a crypto exchange, the thing is you're not probably the only one who's for whom it's important to scale. You have these partners. For example, we have to do a KYC, and then we have a third-party service that we use for KYC. Similarly, we have multiple third parties that we use, and then we have our banks, where we have to accept INR deposits so that you can buy your cryptocurrency with. So you have banking partners, you have KYC partners, you have different technology partners. And one of the things we realize is if you're growing at a normal pace, all of these partners can also scale with you. But the moment your growth is, let's say, 3x, 4x in a month's time, that's when everything starts breaking. And sometimes maybe for that level of scale, no one is prepared. But at least to a certain extent, I think you have to think about how do you scale not just your systems, but all of the systems that are connected to you. And that's something I think we just learned when we started growing really fast in the last 6 months. And for that, some of the things we've done is we've gone to the extent of even helping our partners scale up on. And then sometimes we've also had to build those services in-house because they could not support us any longer. And I think rapid hiring is something we've had to do. We've grown our team 3 or 4x in the last 1 to 2 months alone. So that's something that you have to do. The other important thing is, I think for an exchange business, it's not just scaling your technology, but it's also how do you scale up all the regulators, the people, the legal aspects. Because the moment you see such a massive number of people entering the crypto ecosystem, along with that, you also see massive problems that occur because we deal with finances. So you have law enforcement. Suddenly, let's say if 2 or 3 law enforcement agencies were reaching out to you, now when you're scaling up, you might see 5-10 times the request. So we've had to deal with all of these scaling. And I wouldn't say that that's something that you can be prepared for. But if you're in the financial world, I think, or any part of it, one of the key thing about scaling is don't focus only on your technology or only on the product. Look at all aspects of your business. Customer support, for example, we've had to suddenly because we saw a bump in signups, we saw a bump in tickets, and we didn't have enough people to service those customers. So an all-round approach to scaling is very important. And it's not just about the technology, it's about every part of your business. So we've learned that the hard way because we've had a very short time to deal with this. It was just, I think if you are following the crypto market, you'll realize that Bitcoin prices, they just shot up month after month. And with that shoot up in the prices, we've seen a shoot up in our user signups as well. So, but overall, it's been exciting. I think there's a lot to learn and a lot more to go. So yeah, that's what we've been doing.
Sure. Well put, Nishchal. The fact that you shouldn't have this, you should, but not necessarily a laser product just on laser focus just on the product. It's an overall, a look at both your consumer base as well as your community, as well as your employees when you're scaling up. All of that needs to be sort of taken along for that ride when you talk about scaling. And you mentioned about community, the importance of really building the ecosystem quite often in your previous answers. So that clearly plays a big role in crypto. How do you really distribute ownership of the community? Why is community ownership so important if you can delve deeper into that? And how do you really engage with the developer community in the crypto space and blockchain as well?
Look, when you think about crypto, one of the most distinguishing factor about building a crypto product is in the traditional system, when you build a product, your consumers are just using your product. They have nothing else. You as a founder and maybe your investors would monetarily benefit, but your customers never benefit monetarily directly from the growth of their product. In crypto, the whole concept has been turned upside down, where crypto products have the opportunity to involve their customers in the financial growth also. What I mean by that is, when I previously said that we reserved a part of our tokens, we have our token called WRX. So we reserved about 15% of that token for our community. And what that meant was, as our company grows, as the product grows, the token value also increases according to that. And because we distributed these tokens early on, our users were also benefiting financially as our companies, as the product grew and the usage of that token grew. And I think this is something that any new age crypto company is going to employ. We were probably one of the first in India to do this. Nobody had really distributed their tokens, free of cost to their early users, and this experiment really played out well for us. And I think this is something anyone can employ in the future. If you're into crypto, distribute the success, even the financial success of your product to your customers. Because what happens is then you you've created like tens of thousands of evangelists of your product, and your word of mouth growth gets to the next level. Like I've been really good at a word of mouth in my previous company, but that was just for the product usage that people used. Out here, people came in, and the kind of dedication and kind of enthusiasm I've seen in people to get this product out to their friends, to tell everyone about it, that's been massive. And it's because they were also involved in the success of the company. So I think crypto businesses have this unique opportunity to, unfortunately, it's not there in the non-crypto businesses, but in crypto, you can definitely involve. And we've done that all the time. The second is, even now, when we build something, so there are two approaches you can take as a company. One is you build a product and then you announce to your community saying, you built this. What we do is we usually try to involve the community right at the stage of planning to build something. We have like this, set of, I would say, a close group of our people who will help us beta test. Even we get feedback early on. So involving your community even in the building process, so that there's a sense of ownership and they can give you early feedback. I think that is also again very important, because you could always say that you care about the community, but the best way is to involve them in what you do. So we've done that. We've closely involved them in our whole product building processes. So yeah, I think these are some of the things where you bring in ownership, because I think the moment people are involved in building your company, growing it, that's when they get ownership. And I think that's what we've been doing.
Well, this is, of course, something really enlightening, about the cryptocurrency business. The fact that as your company scales and grows, the consumer and the community also sort of benefits, and their interest and investments also sort of grow multifold. So thanks for that, good takeaway that we sort of discovered today. And, going deeper into the products that crypto really has and the many concepts out there, which ones are you really excited about the most? Which ones have the most potential to impact at scale? Because I think the most popular ones right now are Bitcoin and Ethereum. Those are the ones that are flying around. But what are the other ones that have more potential?
There's quite a few of them. There are thousands, or I think tens of thousands of crypto out there. And the most important thing to understand is first is the classification of crypto. Because the common misconception is that every crypto is a currency. So cryptos are classified into four major categories. They can either be a currency, or they could be an asset, or they could be a utility or a security. Most of the crypto that you encounter in your everyday, say, trading experience and all, they are either assets or utilities. So what I mean by asset is, let's take the example of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is seen like the digital version of gold. The way you have gold in the real world, people say that Bitcoin is built for the online world. And the reason is because it's limited in number. That's only going to be 21 million Bitcoin, not more than that. So people buy Bitcoin with the concept that as more people enter the crypto ecosystem, because Bitcoin is limited in number, the prices are going to go up. Now, similarly, apart from assets, now there are utilities. Utilities are, for example, Ethereum. Now, Ethereum is a token. Ether is the token that you buy so that you can use it on the Ethereum blockchain. So a lot of these token projects are built for the respective blockchain on top of which they are. And that's the reason why people buy. Then apart from that, some of the new concepts that have emerged is, one is DeFi, DeFi. You might have heard about it, at least in passing. It's called decentralized finance. What that means is there are these set of protocols being built, which eventually will help you run an entire financial, let's say, website without needing to really open a bank. So a day will come when all of these DeFi protocols will help you create a bank of your own, where you just have to use these protocols. And each of these protocols have their own tokens. Now in DeFi, for example, there are these lending products where you could, let's say you buy Bitcoin, and now what do you do with that? These DeFi protocols help you lend that Bitcoin to someone else on the internet, without any intermediary in between. And for lending, you'll get an interest. So there are these protocols where you can earn interest because you are going to lend your Bitcoin or any other crypto asset. So this is DeFi. The fourth important thing is NFTs. This is non-fungible token, and this is all the rage right now. What are NFTs? Are nothing but images, unique images, I would say, by your artists or your big celebrities and all. And these images are such that for the first time on the internet, you can actually own an image, and only you are the owner. Because until now, if I had a wallpaper, for example, an image, I could just send it to you, and we both have a copy of it. But in NFTs, you can have a unique image where you you have the ownership of that image. So this is now turning out to be more like you're those in the real world, how you have art and you have your big art pieces that you can buy, and eventually, if you think it becomes popular, you can sell it off to someone. You can do the same with NFTs. So that's another emerging trend of crypto, and it's getting really popular now. So yeah, I think quite a few things. I wouldn't want to pinpoint and say buy this or buy that. That's financial advice I don't want to give. But I would say before you get in, start learning and understanding what this is all about. And even if you want to get in with a small amount, like let's say 1,000 rupees, just so that you get an understanding of the entire cycle of how it is to buy crypto, to hold it, and then to sell it. Don't jump with a larger amount. Spend a while, maybe a week or a month, and then decide how much you want to invest. And there are quite a few investment opportunities. This is still early. To give an example or an idea of the numbers, the internet has about 4.73 billion people. And anyone on the internet can actually buy crypto today. But as on today, there are about 120 million people on the internet who own crypto. So just 3% of the internet owns crypto. It's both good and bad. The good is you can be an early adopter. The bad is it's still very early days. You don't know which direction this experiment will go. But yeah, that's the state of crypto as on today.
Sure, Nishal, thanks for being so candid on that. And clearly, there are a lot of exciting assets and investment opportunities out there. But I think the underlying message that you gave is that educate yourself first and, learn about it. And then sort of take small bets to begin with. Now, you of course mentioned the whole concept of NFT, the non-fungible token marketplace. You've launched something on those lines, one of Asia's first ones. So if you can tell us a little bit more about it and how that is doing.
Well, I touched upon NFT. I'll give you an example again. NFT in the simplest, the word non-fungible is. Let's say if I had a 100 rupee note and you had a 100 rupee note, we could exchange that and we would still be left with 100 rupees because the value is the same. So that's called fungible. You can just exchange it. Non-fungible is where you can't exchange something that you own for an equivalent amount, which is where all these digital art comes in. Because if I have a digital art, it's very different and unique compared to you owning a digital art. So that's what NFTs are all about. And NFTs can be in any forms and shapes. For example, there are NFTs that are images, which is usually the most popular NFTs. But there are NFTs which are videos. So you have video clips created by artists. Then you have music NFTs, where you will only own that music on the internet. So there are these different kinds of NFTs. What we've done is we've created a platform where if you're an artist and you have created your own NFT, you can come and put it up for sale. And anyone on the internet can come and buy it from you. And we are seeing a lot of artists now wanting to start that and put up their NFT tokens on our platform. I think since launch, it's just been a few months, we've seen about, $70,000 worth of NFTs being sold already. And it's still early days. It's still very highly experimental. But I think the good thing about NFTs is for the first time, people can own something digitally. It's never happened before where you could have digital art owned just by you. And that's happening thanks to NFTs. And I think the future, how we see this is, if you look at the whole influencer market until now, they've been able to sort of gain a large number of, let's say, fans and followers online. But the only way they could monetize that fan and followership is, let's say, by either putting some sponsored video or some ads that they don't like. Now, what they can do is they can monetize their popularity by creating an NFT and selling it to their fans. And I think that's where this whole excitement about NFT comes, because this will enable all the millions of artists that are there online to monetize their followership, and it's going to be a very interesting thing going forward. Still early days. It's just been a few months. 2021 is when you started hearing about NFTs. So we are on like a ground zero. But I think the next few years, this will all be more easier to access and to buy. And that's what we're trying to do. Make it easier for you to buy that NFT. You have let's say if you have your own personal favorite artist online, maybe within 5 to 10 minutes, you should be able to buy an NFT that belongs to them. That's the idea, and that's the approach with what we're building.
Nishchal, sounds like a really interesting and exciting space to be invested in, and something that has a lot of scope and potential. And now, talking about early days on one hand and the future on the other, this question we can't help but ask in terms of regulation and compliance. Those seem to also be some of the biggest challenges for crypto startups. There is some amount of skepticism really about the entire space in the market. So, how would you really advise founders to go about this if they're interested in getting into the space, and investors, and what is your outlook or understanding of the entire regulation and compliance bit?
Look, I think for founders, I would definitely say that this is your opportunity to be an early mover, and you should get in if you're interested in crypto. Sure, there are these regulatory hurdles and regulatory concerns, but look at the history of any product. It's always innovation first and regulation second. You can't, if you wait for regulation, the market would have been saturated by then. We as exchanges, we're part of a group called BACC, the Blockchain and Crypto Council. The objective there is, even if there are no rules, let's self-regulate. So, the concept is not that just because it's not regulated, there are no rules, we don't have to follow any. What we do is we try to sort of learn a lot from the financial sector, and we are applying that on us. For example, KYC. Now, there is no rule for a crypto startup to do KYC, but we voluntarily do that. Same with AML policies and quite a few things. So we've sort of self-regulated, but now we are waiting for regulations, and I think we are actively working towards it. But it's going to take some time because it's a new sector, a new segment. There's a lot to learn for the government also. So I would give it at least 2 to 3 years. And as an entrepreneur, I think you should not wait for that, because once that comes, you're going to see a ton of startups cropping up. And now is your opportunity to build towards it.
Nicely put, Nishchal. That innovation should come first, and regulation, of course, will follow. And we should not really, let go of that first mover advantage as well when the market is probably hot and exciting. Now, talking about, the software aspects as well, like you mentioned, the interest in crypto as well as NFT, all of that sort of rose in the last 2 years, 2020 and 2021. You've hired a lot of employees and onboarded them in this entire, remote workforce scenario. That really is your first sort of policy, remote first workforce. So what really is your playbook for managing a distributed workforce, and what is the future, in this space and when it comes to working from home?
I think, look, this whole remote thing, our eyes opened up to this only during the pandemic, and this was in March 2020. I think before that we were always like I had read about remote work, but did not know whether it would really work. The pandemic sort of forced it into that, and a few months into it, we realized that this was going to be something that we'll stick with forever, instead of going back to office when the pandemic was over. You don't have to decide what to wear in the morning to work. And I think that's the biggest relief. A mental barrier is broken. And the other is you can work from anywhere and you can hire from anywhere. So there's a lot of advantages. Now, the thing is, how do you ensure that you can efficiently function? And this is where I think it's a make or break for most companies. And we did face issues, but we tackled them brilliantly. And I think that has helped us get into this zone. The first most important thing, like if you look at the traditional office setup, you sort of meet each other, and there are these discussions that happen, and it's done. In a remote work, you'll have to be more disciplined because you don't see people, you don't meet people. So bringing in a discipline of meetings, sort of a calendar in the meetings and pre-scheduled meetings. I think that discipline is something that overall you'll have to emphasize within the company. The second is metrics. In a traditional setup, you sort of probably everyone looks at each other and starts working, and they're motivated to work. But in a remote setup, metrics is what pushes people to deliver their best. So we've sort of gone really deep into being metric oriented, and the way you give ownership and way you motivate people is let them own some of the metrics so that they can chase it on their own, because in remote people can work whenever they want. So there's no such concept as having people managers, where people managers will come in and they'll tell you what to work, how much to work, how to work. You just give them metrics and they'll chase those metrics, and that's has really worked well for us. The third is communication, and this we faced a lot in the initial days, where we realized sometimes when we launch something, some part of our team did not even know about it. Before in the office, what has happened is because you're in the same table, you just talk about a product launch, someone hears about it and they're ready. So here, bringing in that right communication and processes so that before you go live, everyone who's a stakeholder understands and knows about it. I think that's the other important thing we realized. So I think these 2-3 things, if you can just sort them, you'll have a really productive workforce. The fourth most important thing is trust. I think in remote, what happens is even more than anything, you'll have to trust people, because you're sitting in your house and you don't have anyone else around you. You'll just have to trust them and be just patient enough for them to deliver. Otherwise, it'll just be your remote work is all about you being on a phone call with people, which we try to avoid. We just have trust. We have some schedules. When to demo what. There's a calendar set in, and just people appear on those meetings. There's no in between, follow-ups. We reduce that, so that has really worked out well for us.
Nischal, great to see that, like a lot of other companies as well, you at WazirX have really spotted that silver lining despite work from home and really made it work for your benefit. And now a final word really of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs in the cryptocurrency space, probably for entrepreneurs on one end and interested investors as well. What would you say in terms of advice?
Look, I think it's very rare in your let's say entrepreneurial journey where you get to be an early mover, and it's sort of once in a decade, I would say, that you get that opportunity. There was this gold rush many years ago, and then there was this the real estate boom, then there was a stock market boom, and then I think in the year 2000 you had the internet boom, and then 2007 the mobile boom. Now this is that crypto is that new I would say early mover advantage you have, and it's growing fast, and you get to be there right at the beginning of it. And I believe that whether you're an entrepreneur or an investor, you should grab this opportunity, because if I could go back in time, I would go to the time when internet companies were being built, when the Amazons of the world were being built, when the Google was being built. So that opportunity in crypto is now. And I think there's tons of things to be built. You don't have to really try too hard on figuring out what to build. It's like a blank canvas, and you can build what you want. Same with investors also. The reason why people are investing into crypto so early on is because they know even now only 3% of the world is into crypto. So they want to be early investors. You look at real estate, or you think of gold, you think of anything. You're not going to be the top 3%. You're going to be probably the bottom 90, 95% person who's getting into it. So this is that opportunity for you. And I think as an investor also, don't put all of your investments. It's still a high risk because it's a small number of people in this. So maybe 5 to 10% of your portfolio into a high risk investment if you want to put in, then crypto is probably that opportunity for you, where it can grow really rapidly if the markets are conducive.
So Nischal, thanks so much for that and for your time with us on Your Story today, for really telling us that, if you are an aspiring entrepreneur in the crypto space, the opportunity is now. So grab that first mover advantage when you can. And also the fact that innovate away. is what most entrepreneurs believe. The regulation will fall into place. So thank you so much for really sharing your insights on this very interesting space that has caught a lot of investor interest. We're also seeing a lot of daily trading volumes peaking on the exchanges as well. So more power to you, and all the very best in scaling WazirX from here on. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Shivani.